of the DRIVE program. As a practical note, the first recording and presentation of our inspirational talk of last week of Job Nijs is available at the online learning management system. So you can share that if you like. Just to recall, you are here at an inspirational talk of the DRIVE training program of EIT Health. And we started this program to work with a number of regions from Central and Southern Europe to work on developing regional innovation ecosystems. And these are the EIT Health hubs. And together we analyze our ecosystems, and we work using the design approach to strategically develop our region into becoming more innovative in the coming years. And with that, we mean that we are able to create more international competitive products and services from our regions. And for that, we use the talent base of our region, so all the smart people in there, the entrepreneurial mindset, the knowledge that's available, the network, and we bring that together in a strategic manner. And how to do that, that's what we focus on in our joint training. And we have a number of mechanisms for that, for the learning. So we use literature, we do assessments, and we have some masterclasses, and we have inspirational talks. And so the second inspirational talk is today with Professor Karel Luyben. And we try to find people that have an expertise in a certain area that's relevant for innovation ecosystems, and that have done it so that they can share their experience with all of us, and that we can discuss it and learn from it. But also we invite some of our own hubs to share their experience, and so that we can learn from our own experiences in the group. So we will hear from Karel shortly with an introduction. After that, we have a Q&A session, for which we invite all of you to send in questions. So during the talk of Karel, and you can already start actually, you can post in the chat questions that you have for Karel, and we will ask them ourselves via Nora, or we will give you the mic and you can raise it yourself. So Karel and I discussed on Tuesday that we are really open for all sorts of questions, no taboos, everything can be asked, and we're looking forward to having nice discussions about it. Speakers from the hubs today will come from Zagreb, Croatia, and from Cluj-Napoca in Romania. And I would also like to welcome the guests that we have today. We have 25 participants in the trainings program, but we have 70 people registered for our program, including many guests from the regions that you work in. And I saw many people from also university management and leadership. So it's great that we have you here today. And Karel is happy to share his experience with all of you on how we did it in Delft. And his other experience with other universities is very worthwhile too. With that, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Karel Luyben. So Karel started as a professor in the 1980s, as a biotechnology professor, already his own company. And with that, he was quite a front runner also at TU Delft. Actually, that wasn't always appreciated by his colleagues, as might be familiar to all of you. Starting companies is not something that's always appreciated in academic setting. But he did so already in the 1980s. And then in the 1990s, 1998, he became the dean of the largest faculty of TU Delft, Applied Sciences. And his own vision on science and entrepreneurship and the role of universities in society, he introduced that in the larger academic community as a dean, so as part of university management, and later on as a rector. And he promoted collaboration with either with industry or with other universities and regional government. And he worked on that himself quite intensely, setting up collaborations such as Medical Delta in our region, together with Leiden and Rotterdam. And there are some good medical schools there, but also with industry and regional government, really setting up a triple helix collaboration. And he did that already as a dean and later as a rector, also working on in other domains with Leiden and Erasmus. We call that the LDE collaboration. And sort of, I think it was 2 years ago, Karel, that you retired, but he's still full-time busy all the time, also working in the CESAR network in Europe, which is a collaboration of universities of technology all over Europe, and also working on open science, important promoter of that. And I'm happy to say that I worked with Karel for many years on this, on all these collaboration projects. And I'm very privileged and honored that Karel has decided to join us today and to share his vision first, and then some of the examples of how we started to implement that as part of university management. As I said, Karel is very open to discussion. So please share all your ideas and your questions. I will certainly do so. So Karel will give an introduction first, and then I will start with some of the questions that we prepared. So with that, I think I will stop my sharing. Karel, can you share your presentation?
Yeah, I will start, Roel, but I first would like to thank you for your kind introduction and for your friendly words, and especially for the opportunity to talk to you here today. You told I was retired. I'm not sure what that means, because I'm still employed by the Delft University of Technology, as you know.
Yeah.
But I usually don't talk about being retired or not being retired anymore. I talk about receiving your retirement pay or not. That's the actual difference between the past and today. Well, and I do have another role. I'm not involved in the leadership of the university anymore. I work for the university, but mainly in the country, in the region, and outside of the country, in Europe, as you mentioned. We may come to that depending on where the questions go. I will start sharing my screen and use a few slides I've made quite some years ago as an introduction, and I called these slides the research quadrants. And by that I mean that if you look at the research organizations are doing, then this can be, for me, divided into two dimensions. One dimension is, where does the question come? Does the question you are going to work on as researcher come from curiosity, or does it come from utility or a possible utility? And the other dimension is what type of approach do you take to this question? Do you take a fundamental approach, or do you take a pragmatic approach? And in these four quadrants, you can position the different research organizations that are working on research. First of all, there is the general universities or comprehensive universities, the universities of technology, the technological institutes, and the industry. And as you can see, comprehensive universities tend to work more on curiosity-driven questions, while universities of technology tend to work more on usefulness-driven questions or utility-driven questions. Well, of course, technological institutes, at least in our country, it differs a little bit from country to country, even work on more pragmatic, even have a more pragmatic approach and work on utility-driven questions. And of course, for the industry, the question is, if it works, it works. not necessarily we have to understand why it works. This is a little bit exaggerated, of course. Again, depends on the type of industry and the type of question. But so you can divide the domain of research done by the different organizations. And you can also better understand, at least my vision, on where a University of Technology is positioned. In my view, a University of Technology, if you could create it from scratch, should work on usefulness-driven questions in a fundamental manner, because universities are there to work on a fundamental approach. I have not seen other institutions in my environment that were created to do a more fundamental approach than universities are supposed to do. So if you look at this field, what you would like to do is move immediately from left under to right upper corner. The questions that come from curiosity lead to applications in industry immediately. We all know this is not the reality. More of the reality is that a question arises here, leads to somewhat more fundamental questions, and hopefully ends up in an application or in a public-private partnership with industry over there. And then I usually tease the comprehensive universities by saying, well, they work on questions that start there, and they come with answers that stop there as well. This is just to tease them a little bit to work more on usefulness-driven questions. These are, of course, clouds of activities. It is not strictly that all the questions are usefulness-driven or all the questions are curiosity-driven. There is a spread, and therefore you see these clouds in the background to show that these organizations, of course, have a spectrum of things they work on, but the most important point of the spectrum is, of course, in the domains I have chosen. So if you look at the different organizations working on research, and if you want to move from research to innovation, an important way to do that is by public-private partnerships. And these are partnerships usually created between universities, sometimes general universities, but very often also universities of technology, technological institutes and industry, or without technological institutes, directly with industry. And the most important remark I would like to make with respect to these public-private partnerships is that you understand each other's driving force. The industry is there to make money. It's not created to do fundamental research. And the university is there to do fundamental research, but especially to train people in doing that and to deliver people to society to be able to help society with the applications, or if they stay in the university, to help the universities with doing fundamental research and training new people. And it's this public-private partnership which I think is one of the driving forces in the innovation channel. And with that, I stop sharing my screen rule and we could start the discussion, because it gives you some, let's say, feeling for where I come from, how I see the world, and how I see the position of a university like the Delft University of Technology, but also other universities. As Roel said, I'm in the board of the CESAR organization. I have been president for quite a number of years of that organization. And this is an organization of 54 engineering universities or science and technology universities, beautifully distributed over all of Europe. The most eastern one is in Tomsk, which is twice as far as Moscow from here. Roel.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. The vision that you have here and the importance of collaboration in between the different domains. And I think if you look now at the Delft ecosystem, there's quite a lot of people working like that. That share this vision. But when you were a professor in the 1980s, I think you already had this vision as well back then. So why did, despite the fact that not many of your colleague professors might have shared that vision at the time, so why did you decide to set up your own company back then? It was in biotechnology, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it is this gap, you could say, between the fundamental trying to answer questions and the, let's say, real applications. And let me give you an example out of the quadrant system. Let's suppose you know that adding carbon to rubber hardens the surface. Then a tire company would say, okay, let's see if it's safe, let's see if it's economically viable, and let's answer a few other questions. And if the answers are yes, the tire company is going to sell tires and make money because that's their business. Now, if you have the same question in the University of Technology, which is quite possible, then the first PhD student would start asking the question, how about other atoms? How about molecules? How about other types of rubber? Can I make a model of it? Can I predict it? And there you spend easily 2 periods of PhD projects answering all these questions without selling any tires and making money. But it was not your task to sell tires and make money because you are a university. And combining these 2 approaches is important. And there is a gap, as we all know. It's not so easy if you even work on usefulness-driven question that it automatically leads to use or to an application. And it is this gap where we decided, okay, we want to do something about it. We start a company in the domain we are working in. This was bioprocess technology, microbial physiology. We see a lot of possible applications. And what we want to do is start a company first with some research projects leading to some possible applications, make joint ventures with other companies, and then from the revenues that come from selling the technology, selling the know-how, selling the products, we can then generate more research activities. That's exactly what we did. It took a long time. It took at least 10 years to really get it going. It's not an easy thing, especially if you do it on the side. I didn't work in the company. I was one of the shareholders and an advisor. Later on, I had to sell my shares, of course, because I became a dean. There's one other angle which is maybe interesting to tell. Because the time frame at that time, at least in our university and in our environment in the Netherlands, was completely different. It was in the 60s and 70s, not done to work with companies. It was dirty as a university to sell your soul to companies and to work with them. And I remember having for 6 years a discussion with a professor of Leiden, Piet van der Putte, you may know him, at that time about this quadrant system, which I was developing. And then ultimately Piet said after 6 years of discussion, now I understand what you mean. And I can tell you, if you have a possible application, then I won't work on it anymore. So I choose projects which are curiosity driven, and if there comes a possible application inside, I stop working on it, I choose another project. This is the real, let's say, curiosity driven approach. And he was right, because he was working on, let's say, the influence on skin cells of the light, and then the companies came and wanted to have IP on it and wanted to have a patent on it, and then he said, I won't be in this discussion, this is not my thing. Of course, he was in a general university, but it's rightfully so. I don't say we should all work on usefulness-driven question. No, part of our research should be done on curiosity-driven questions. But there was this gap between, let's say, doing research in a fundamental way and real applications in life that drove us, or well, give us the incentive to start a company.
And I dare say that this culture that you're just describing from Leiden University was also quite present at the Delft University. Maybe not so much, but it used to be much more than it is now when you became a dean and later the rector. So how did you start to introduce your vision in the academic community? So how did that process go? Because it's not really an easy process. So what are mechanisms to start doing something like that, start that discussion?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was not only me. There's a lot of people, especially in these 3 organizations. These are huge, big universities. So the interaction with Leiden and with Rotterdam was stimulated by me very early on. I have been lecturing in Leiden for 10 years, and we had already a collaboration again in the 80s. And the stimulation came from my feeling that we are complementary. The Delft University of Technology and the Leiden University, the Delft University of Technology and the Erasmus Medical Center, the biggest part of the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, are complementary organizations which can help each other. We also had as you know, a collaboration going between the 4 technical universities, and this was more let's say, division of tasks over the country. In my view, if you work together, there's 3 levels, as you know. One level is you share information. You call each other now and then and share information. And if you share information over a wider area, that helps. The second level is that you do something with this information so that influences your behavior. For example, as 4 technical universities, you decide that you divide tasks in the country and you don't do things double. You have to be able to tell the taxpayers that pay your research what you're doing with that money, and you have to be able to explain that you decided to do this type of work there or to do this type of work at 3 places. But the third level is the level where you create something new, where you start new projects and where you jointly start to create new things. And this is a level of collaboration, in my view, which is more easily done with complementary organizations. And we are lucky being in the environment of 2 complementary other universities to start this collaboration. But it was talking, and persuading people. First in the department, which I was heading, later on in the faculty I was heading, and again later on in the whole university I was heading. Again, it was not only me, it's also the time frame that changed, the mood that changed with respect to this, the country that changed, the government that stimulated this more nowadays than it did in the past. Even the European Commission is looking much more towards this, let's say, usefulness-driven question being answered by research organizations. Maybe a little too much, you could argue. There's this debate going on the European research area at the moment in the European Commission. The first draft was already at the beginning of 2019. It's still not out because internally in the Commission there is people that say it should be much more industry driven, the questions we're going to work on, the domains we're going to work on. And there are also people that say, no, we need also the ERC grants, the excellence in the research. And I do think you need both, and you have to find the right balance between the two.
So I'm going to make it a bit more sharp here, maybe. Because as you're saying it now, I completely understand. So it's important that we do this. But then on the other hand, the scientists are not easy to control. So if managers have a vision, we should go in that direction, and especially in the Netherlands, but I think it's also true in other universities. Scientists tend to say, okay, well, but that's fine, dean, rector, manager, but I'm going in that direction because that's good for my career. And I think I don't want to do anything to do with industry. So how do you approach that? How do you put things in motion that people feel appreciated and rewarded if they make this step?
Yeah, we select people even to be stubborn and to be going their own way. So that's a selection criteria in the universities usually. So indeed, then you come to the question, and how do you get the herd to move in a certain direction? It starts with the way you appraise people, with the way you reward and recognize the things they are doing. So if you have a reward and recognition system in your country or in your university as a result of what the country would like to see, that counts the number of publications and counts the number of citations, and then says he has 2 publications more, so he's better, or he has more citations on his publication, so he's better, then you're in a very poor situation as far as I'm concerned, and you will not stimulate this behavior. You will stimulate researchers to produce more publications and to see to it that they get more citations. For example, by having more authors on the paper that come from abroad. That helps enormously in your citations. Now, if you, on the other hand, reward people or appraise them, it's a better word, because in my view, you don't reward them with money, you reward them with, let's say, position, you reward them with a tap on the shoulder, and you reward them in recognizing their contribution. If you reward them in a broader spectrum, like we started doing, as you may know, in the department and later on in the faculty I was heading, and in the university ultimately, by looking at, in our case, 5 dimensions: education, research, valorization, so what does it mean for society, what's the impact in society, leadership, and organizational skills. And those 5 dimensions covered for me most of the things, or almost all of the things a researcher should be able to do. Of course, nobody can excel on all the 5 dimensions, so it can compensate a little bit. But then the impact dimension includes starting your own company, doing public-private partnerships, getting the second and third money streams in, so money from the Science Foundation or money in collaboration with industry. And if you start rewarding that in the sense that, okay, we expect you to do those 5 things in a certain distribution and as a group in the whole domain, that helps enormously, and it takes time. And an appraisal system will automatically drop that later on if you don't maintain it. So the leadership is extremely important. For me, leadership are those people that prove that this should be done this way. They show by example, they lead by example, and they have to be able to honestly evaluate people on their contribution. So getting, same with open science. You don't move to open access and to sharing data automatically because researchers all want this. No, you have to incentivize it by giving rewards and recognition. If you reward that people share their results, then you get another sharing of the results than if you only count, as an example, of course, publications or citations. So it's a matter of walking the talk, showing what you would like, discussing this with your academic freedom as far as it goes, because it doesn't go everywhere. It's not that they can just do what they want. You hire.
So I think with that, it would be interesting for the discussion maybe later on to hear from other regions as well. So to what extent do they do the appraisal come from within the university, or is this, for instance, organized also at a national level? So where do the appraisal come from? Because sometimes the national government or Ministry of Education or Research has also an influence on what's happening in the university. So that might differ per country. So how do you organize the appraisal of the research community in your university? It's an interesting topic, I think, because there are some keys there to change the university.
And we are using these keys and discussing about this in the open science movement. I am personally writing the chapter on rewards and recognition for the SRIA, which is the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda for Europe. And in that chapter, I try to write down what is the present system. Very often, let's say, influenced, not the right word, introduced by the ministry and then taken over by the universities, and how can you influence that?
So I would like to get back to this regional collaboration, because you explained earlier that so with the other technical universities of Europe, of the Netherlands, TU Delft aligns its activities. But with the universities that are close by, in Leiden and in Rotterdam, so maybe for people that don't know the region, that's within 15 kilometers. So from Delft to Leiden is 15 kilometers, and from Delft to Rotterdam is also sort of 15 kilometers. So it's all very close by, and there are good transport connections. And there are 2 medical centers, 1 University of Technology, a business school. So it's and a comprehensive university in Leiden. So it's really a mixture of academics, but also quite a number of industry and national government, and a big harbor and hospital. So it's very diverse. And setting up collaboration in between these all these actors, whether they're within the science community or even with industry and government and other organizations. That's quite cumbersome. It takes time, takes money. That diverts from your research efforts. You could also spend the time in the lab. So can you give an example of something that comes from such a collaboration that actually brings something completely new? That you thought, okay, we couldn't have done this without this collaboration. and now we have something unique, beautiful.
Well, let me give you an example, which we call, and you might know it, Holland PTC, which is a proton therapy clinic, which is now in Delft. Some, I think 15 years ago by now, 13, 14 years ago, I was a dean, so it must be more than 12 years ago. In the Faculty of Applied Sciences, I got into touch with a person from the Erasmus Medical Center, and this person was hired by the Erasmus Medical Center, I found out, who approached me in asking, we would like to start proton therapy in this university in Rotterdam in that case, and would you like to join us, because we need physical knowledge and especially the domain needs to be developed further by the physicists. I said, yeah, sounds very interesting. I looked into it, I looked into the literature and said, great, we'll join you. And about a year later, I called the Erasmus University and said, what happened? Because I never heard anything, only I saw an interim report and there it stopped. Yeah, the guy fell ill and he got into a divorce and he stopped this project. I said, well, you hired the guy, you can continue yourself. Yeah, but we're too busy, so we'll forget about the idea. I said, come on, you can't do that. So a month later, I called him and I said, do you mind if I start the project? Do you join the team and will we do it anyway? So there it started, that from the Delft University, with my personal effort, we started pushing this idea, which took us more than 11 years to get it realized, because there was no proton therapy in the Netherlands, there was no regulation, we had to involve the government, we had to instruct the government how to make the regulations, etc. There was only one side condition. I said, the clinic has to be in Delft, otherwise I won't do this, because this is in between Leiden and Rotterdam, and it is right at the heart where we have a nuclear reactor, where we have the physicists working, and this is exactly what we need. And this is what happened. It took quite some perseverance, it took quite some pushing and pulling, and it took, let's say, difficulties in finding the right people and getting the job done. But it's there, it's successful, and everybody is now proud of having, let's say, a proton therapy clinic to treat cancer patients, very special types of cancers which are close to the spine or in the head or in the eye. We have an eye treatment line because Leiden is expert on eye cancers. So this is an example which could not have been done by the Delft University alone, definitely not. I would not even have the idea. The idea came originally from them. It's not a new idea. There's 40 of these clinics over the world, so it's an existing thing, but it was a new idea to start it here. And we needed this collaboration. And by continuing to tell the scientists that there are science in there, continuing to tell the governments in nearby that there is business in there, and showing that there is a market out there for the patients, ultimately you can make it into a success.
I know the project quite well indeed, and I know also that the triple helix collaboration was quite vital to realize this as well, right? So for the lobby towards the national government, we could use local mayors and governors. Industry chipped in to fund part of the facility, so it's €100 million installation with 10 million funded by the equipment supplier. So it's really a joint effort of all types of parties that pushed this.
That's correct. Yeah. And we had some pushback from the other university medical centers, which said, of course, this is not necessary. We want one as well. And if you can have the permit to get one, then we should get one as well. So ultimately, the government said 4 in the country. There's 2 now. So yeah, we all gone through these hurdles, and then they tried to punish us by not allowing us to treat children because we were not on a hospital site. Interesting enough, more than 50% of these facilities are not on a hospital site worldwide. Never anything happened with children, but okay. In the end, it was more prosperous for us not to treat children, by the way. So we said to the Groningen, but yeah, you got all kinds of pushback, and yeah. Perseverance is, I think, an important word as well with respect to the reward and recognition system in a university. Stick to it, keep on it, maintain it, improve it, discuss it, and the same here. So don't give up.
Maybe one last point, I would just a quick thing. If we ever go to Delft with the group, we can also go to Holland PTC. It's a
Yes,
beautiful center.
Would be a good day. Good, yeah.
And it's at the center of the campus, and it's close to Yes Delft Incubator as well. So it's we will visit it. But maybe last point I wanted to ask you, it's about education, and I think the new education program for clinical technology that came from this collaboration. Can you say a few words about that, of the importance of collaboration and how you can set up new strategic education alliances for that, and what that means for a university?
Did you hear what happened this week, that they got a big recognition? Yeah.
Yep.
Also, again, took years and years. We've now started 5 years ago or something like this, and now the clinical technicians also have what we call in the Netherlands a big recognition. That means that they can do medical treatments themselves under their own autonomy, like medical doctors can. And this is very restricted in our country. You need permission from the government, from the medical part of the government, from the other medical centers. You have to prove that it is worthwhile by showing that some of the operational work or other things are better with these clinical technicians. But we made it, and so yeah, this is another example where maybe it's interesting to widen it a little bit. Originally, when the Erasmus Medical Center was created from a medical hospital there, the university, and we were at that time creating university medical centers in the Netherlands. The consideration was for this new medical center that was supposed to be in Rotterdam to link to the Delft University rather than to what was then called the Economische Hogeschool, the Economic University of Applied Sciences in Rotterdam. Ultimately, because of the pressure from the Rotterdam city and the mayor and the people, the link was made with Rotterdam. And the distance is not that much different between the campus of the Erasmus Medical Center and the rest of the university and the campus of the Medical Center and the Delft University of Technology, maybe twice as far, as you said, very nearby. And at that time, the link was made in Rotterdam, and the Erasmus University came to be, and the Erasmus Medical Center became to be. We're now, based on a question from the Erasmus Medical Center, rediscussing this question, by the way. We're towards a much intenser collaboration between the Delft University and the Erasmus Medical Center. Already there was a closer collaboration between the Delft University and the Erasmus Medical Center as between the rest of the Erasmus University and the Medical Center. But by the way, so we saw that there is a shortage of technological knowledge on the work floor of the medical people in the hospitals. So we decided to start a new line of education, a bachelor and a master's ultimately on technical medicine or clinical technology. And this is part of the same story. The most important task of universities is to educate people, to train people, to bring forward bachelor's, master's, and PhD students that go out in the world and well, shape this world, become the leaders of this world. And in the medical domain, where we have a lot of expertise from the technical side, we of course are in nothing compared to the Erasmus Medical Center, which has all the other expertise. So we joined forces again and created this, again with Luyben, by the way, and created this new line of education. If we do something in research, this should also lead to education. In my view, the education you give as a university depends on the research you choose to do. That's an interesting discussion as well. Some people see research and education as separate things. Well, there may be separate activities to a certain extent, especially for the basic education. But if I would start a university from scratch, I would first choose where would I do the research on, what questions would we like to answer, what disciplines do we need? And if I have the people, then we can start deciding what teaching they can give. So deciding your teaching domain is something separate. If you stop in a certain domain of doing research completely, you should also stop doing that line of education, which is what we've done in the past. And if you start a new line of research, in this case in a medical triangle and medical delta, you also have to create the educational lines that go with it, because you have the people that are able to do that training, are able to give that type of education. So education comes first. That's what I also said. Education, research, impact, remember? First education.
Okay, with that, I would like to see if questions are there among the people, because I've already raised a number of them. I didn't see them in the chat yet. Nora, did you?
Yeah, I got one question from
Okay.
Neringa, who is working at Kaunas University of Technology. And she was asking, yeah, okay, it's very interesting. She was asking how we can motivate our university to collaborate with other universities instead of trying to compete. How can we encourage them towards collaboration?
Yeah, any collaboration, in my view, and I repeat what I said before, has three levels. The level of sharing information, the level of dividing tasks, and the level of doing new things together. So you should start with talking to each other. You should start to be open. You should start by sharing information. And if you have the information on what type of university you are, what type of university the others are, how you can, let's say, tune into each other, you might find out that collaborative, you can start new things, or you might find out that you are in the same domain, and then you should still talk to each other, but then divide tasks. So I think you should look for complementarity, and it starts all with information. And if you're not open, if you're not willing to share that information, it's not going to work. Yeah? So it starts with openness and willingness to share information. As with research data between scientists in the same domain, you have 10 physicists and they do similar type of experiments in a similar type of research. If I give my data to you, we have both the data, and if you give your data to me, we have both the data. While if I give my bike to you, you have the bike and I don't have any more. It's a different story. So there's usefulness in sharing that information and sharing the data.
So if you say you have to start talking to each other.
Yes.
So I know a bit the group of the people in the trainings, and these are not the rectors or the deans. So these are the people that know many people in their own university, and I think they share a lot of the vision that you are just saying. So is it to start these talks in between the universities? Do you need to have the top of the university on board for that, or can you start already at the bottom? So what do you think?
Well, there's of course no yes and no answer here. It's easier if the leadership of the university at the very top helps you and stimulates it. It's easier if the country stimulates this and has measures in place to let's say, even put money into these type of collaborations. But if that's not there and you're convinced this is a good thing to do, I am convinced that this is a good thing to do. I started as a head of department. I started as a dean doing these things. And sometimes in the past, against my own leadership of the university. And then I openly told them, well, maybe you say A, but I do B because I think B is better. And if you tell me I'm not allowed to do B, okay, then I will stop doing it. But if you don't tell me that I'm not allowed to, I will continue moving in that direction and show you that it's worthwhile, which I did, and it worked. But yeah, it's of course rowing against the stream to a certain extent. So if you grow with the stream because the leadership of the university and the country or the region stimulates this type of behavior, that helps, of course. The problem, especially with let's say the region, the country, the leadership of the university, is it changes all the time. So you have to convince new people all the time to continue, and not automatically they will take over let's say the system from their predecessors. So it takes a long time to change this culture and to get this going. In my case, from the beginning of my career as a professor in 1983, I started this type of discussions, and I'm still doing these type of discussions now, more at the European level. But yeah, as I said, perseverance, maintaining it is important. So if you think you can let's say be successful in a year and then do something else, forget it. It's you're either very lucky if that happens, or it doesn't happen at all.
So with your experience also with Europe, and you mentioned you've been to Kaunas and also in Cesar, I know there are plenty of Central European and Southern European universities involved as well. So you see your peer rectors there and board members. So what in your opinion are important arguments for this group of leadership for what they want to achieve? So if people from our training, from our community want to get engaged with university board and have a talk about, we should move into this direction. Should they address that scientific progress can be made here, or it's innovation, or it's we can attract better talent or other talent because we have interesting things to do here? What are the buttons you think for university leadership in general, but mainly also with the people that you've met? What is important?
A lot of things are important, and in many of these universities, unfortunately, I think leadership is elected. So rectors are elected, deans are elected, and that's, in my view, not the right system. And you cannot change that overnight, if you can change it at all. So if you know that your rector or your dean is going to be elected, then you have to organize the electorate to vote for the right dean or to vote for the right rector. And not automatically, because these people are politically interested to get into those positions, they will do the things that are needed in order to move in this direction. Some of them, unfortunately, do things that are more important for their own career than for the university. This is life. You have to live with that. So first you have, I think, to look at what is possible. What do you think can be reached? Talk to these people and see who they are and what they do. Are they elected and try to influence that system? You need more people in the university to do that. And if you cannot all do that, create your own smaller world and try to improve situation there and work. So you have to choose the boundaries of the system you would like to try to change. So when I was a head of department, my boundaries initially were the department itself, of course, always discussing with the faculty, always discuss one level higher. And never do something if you are not open to at least one level higher and discuss this in order to try to change the system. When I became a dean, I was, let's say, powerful enough to do some things in the faculty. As you said, it's not easy. People don't follow you like sheep, huh? But that's good. The resistance is good. The debate is good. And then if you're head of the university, you think you're there, but no, university is very big, very slow to change. And there's other universities as well, and there's the country that gives you money and that sets some regulations. So there is not a black and white answer to this. Again, it's finding your way, selecting what you can and cannot influence, finding your allies, people that work with you to do this, and choose your battles and the size you think you can manage.
Yeah, so span of control, I think, is an important phrase. Absolutely. Here.
Yeah,
so define your span of control and try to get one level up.
And walk the talk, show that this is the way things are done. If I introduced a new appraisal system, I also applied it to myself. If I introduced new rules, I also applied it to myself. So don't think that as a leader you're an exception. On the contrary, you should give the right example.
Okay, so Nora, are more questions coming in?
Yes, it's from Carlos from the University of Évora in Portugal. And he was asking, related to this, what could be the best rewards to promote researcher to go in this direction? So rather the entrepreneurial direction instead of being driven by, the publication and citations.
Yeah. It would be best if the rewards and recognition system of the university, and I know that in Portugal and Spain it's very much determined by the countries, so preferably that in the country would have a certain dimension. And for Carlos, I can say we are working on this in Europe at the moment. There's quite an amount of work and different reports in the domain of rewards and recognition. I know that in Spain and in Portugal this is important also. There was a recent conference, Iberian conference, actually a week ago, which was about rewards and recognition. You can find the material online. It was organized by the EUA together with the Iberian research organizations, and some good presentations were given on rewards and recognition. For example, the rector of Maastricht, Lianne Letchert spoke there and gave a presentation on that, but several other people. So installing the right rewards and recognition system automatically leads, if you implement it correctly, to a different behavior. But if you're the only one in the country or the only one in the university trying to do that, it becomes extremely difficult. So it's then you have to have allies that are willing to deviate from the system as well. Otherwise, you get nowhere. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Nora?
Not at this point.
But then I think we're right on time to also move into our next direction. I just wanted to add one thing to Karel, because where Karel has also always been part of the university management, I was not. I was more of the supportive organization. And I worked also with many researchers, but I could never give the appraisal in the sense that I was responsible for promoting people or giving them a new budget or different positions. But what you can do, even if you're not in that position, so I was secretary of a board with the collaboration for Medical Delta, and I could invite the champions that I saw, some of the maybe associate professors building their careers, and I invited them to give a pitch to the deans. We had a regular meetups, and the deans wanted to see some good examples of what was happening, and I could invite these people to give them a stage in front of the deans, and they thanked me afterwards for that they were able to show their project to these deans that had never heard of that project. So you can also do smart things there, or invite people for a jury task, and then they have a stage and share their experience, and invite them for an interview. If you have a website and social media, do an interview with people that you think these are really champions of what I want to achieve, and make sure that they are visible. And that's also very important for researchers. And I see that Nora just sent me that there was another question coming in.
Yes, exactly, from Darius. He was asking from you, Karel, whether you see the difference between a project manager and the main researcher. So how you define these two roles?
Can you repeat? The project manager, so the more the organizer of the project and managing the project, and the
Yes.
research leader.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, one of the things to make a university successful, in my view, there's about 5 of these items. One of them is leadership, is the most important one, but another one is respect for support staff and scientific staff. And what you often see is that the scientific staff does not have enough respect for the support staff. Without the support staff, the university doesn't work. And also without the scientific staff, it doesn't work, of course, but you need both. It's a yin-yang situation. And creating a culture where these two organizations have respect for each other, that helps enormously. Management is a dirty word in the university, very often by the researchers, unfortunately. So you choose another word, don't call it project manager, but find something new. Then at least you avoid the word manager. But apart from that, I think it is seeing that everybody has his role, and if everybody contributes and is rewarded for that and respected for that, then it's going to work. And that needs respect and trust. These are two important, let's say, things you have to try and implement in an organization.
Okay, thank
Culture
you.
again, unfortunately.
Yes, we always come back to that, right?
Yeah, well, but simple things like making a presentation or writing a publication or doing an education, you can, of course, be much more clearer and adequate in the answers. But these type of things, of course, have to do with culture of the organization. And if you have that in mind, you also realize that it takes a long time and that you cannot do it alone and that you need people to work with you.
Yeah, definitely. And then Vlatka was from the University of Zagreb was also asking a question, but Vlatka, I wonder whether you could elaborate on this, because it's broken into 2 parts and I'm not sure I can put it together.
Maybe he can open his microphone.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Some voice. because it's very lonely at this end. I only see a few faces, and then everybody is behind a silent wall. At the end, we have to make a picture area. Do you do that, Roel? At the end of a session like this, I usually ask the people to all put on the video, and then you make a screen dump, and then get a nice picture.
Yeah, we have too much people in here to make one.
That's true. But 2 screens, 48 people. You can do that.
So Vlad, guys.
Yes, I'm unmuted. I hope
I hear you.
Hear me.
Okay,
that's great. That's great. I am from the Technology Transfer Office at the University of Zagreb, and you partly answered the question in your previous answer, but I was really wondering if you can give a wider comment on how the support services can then contribute to this mission. You know, to which extent in some situations they might lead in some efforts, and to which extent in some situations they need to be primarily a support to the researchers.
Yeah, in my view, they always need to be a support for the researchers, but that doesn't make them less important or less rewarded, in my view. But you have support staff and scientific staff. The scientific staff needs to do the contents of the science. The support staff needs to support that. And if the content of the science asks for a public-private partnership, you need something like a transfer office, you need something like an organization that helps you with that. Or if you want to share data and you want to have a data repository, you need people from the library to know about data and to help you do that in order that the researchers don't have to do all these things themselves. But it comes down to the question, what does the university want? What does the university leadership want? And I think if you're heading a, let's say, technology office or heading a other support unit, it's even more difficult to start something contrary to where the university is moving. I don't think you should not do it, you should try it as well, but it's more difficult than if, let's say, a head of department or a professor or a dean that is respected starts these type of things. But join forces, so make clear to the scientific community where you can help, where you can contribute, and that together you're stronger than as a support staff alone or as a scientific unit alone. Okay. Is that answering your question, or do you mean something else?
Thank you. Yes, it does. I do have a follow-up question, actually.
Go ahead.
And looking at the day-to-day, because in technology transfer circles, there is always this debate, should our customers be our research base or really our industry partners? And if you could also comment on this, you know, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, for me, there's only one answer possible. You're part of the university, you're paid by the university, so your customer, I don't like the word, but that's another story, is the researcher. And if the researchers and the university want to integrate or not integrate, link with the industry, it's becoming a very hard job. So the industry cannot push itself in. They should be invited by the university. So it's a black and white answer, but and the reality is, of course, not as black as white, because you also have to serve the parties outside. You have to keep on the relationship with the parties outside. Sometimes you have to bring on the parties outside to convince the researcher that this is an interesting party. So the customer, to a certain extent, of course, is also the industry outside. But primarily, if you're part of a university, the university is whom you as an organization should serve.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But maybe connected to this, and then we will move to the first presentation from Ian. But Karel, if someone would come to you from university support staff with a new idea, either alone or with some of the scientists, would it make a difference to you if there's a team of people coming in, or just someone only for the support staff with an idea?
It would not make a difference in me willing to listen and start this conversation. But it would make a difference whether I act on it and what I would do as a dean or as a rector. So the first question I always had, if some of the deans came to me when I was a rector, or heads of departments came to me, or a director of the support staff came to me, was, did you talk to your boss about this? And if it's a problem and they didn't talk to their boss, then I say, okay, I'll listen to you. But then the next thing is you talk to your boss, or I talk to your boss, or we both talk to your boss, because this is needed in order to work on it. I'm not going to deal with this just with you. If it's a new idea which was not there before, nothing to do with the conflict or something like that, it's a different story. Then I listen, and I might also, whether it's support staff or not, decide, okay, this sounds like an interesting idea, let's investigate it. Can you investigate it further to talk to these and these people? Can I help in investigate it? And let's see if this is a worthwhile idea and if we can get people convinced. So it depends a little bit on where people come with. But the first thing is they always have a listening ear and an open door. And the second thing is, if there's a conflict, if there's a problem, if there's something which they should have discussed with their leadership and they haven't done so, ultimately I will not act on it. I will either help them in going to this leadership, unless it's something which is really wrong. Then I will go to the leadership myself and inquire. But then we have a real problem in the organization. This is not what you meant, I think, with your question.
No, it's just out of the blue, out of the box new ideas.
Yeah.
And the importance
it doesn't make any difference whether they come from. Actually, I would stimulate support staff to come more often, because the researchers tend to come more often than the support staff does. And that's part of that, what I call culture. I'm on the board of the Aalto University in Helsinki. It's a very interesting job, by the way. It's a great university. They have a business, an art, and a science and technology school. And one of the best things they do I have ever seen in any of the universities is create this culture of respect between support staff and scientific staff. And that helps them enormously. Respect and trust between those two parts of the organization. You jointly can become much greater. And so we talk, even as a board, as well with the president, of course, and some of the deans now and then, but also with the support staff. Of course, always in the presence of the president, and so we don't bypass the president. But I see that they deliver great ideas and a great contribution, and it stimulates them, of course. If they don't work in isolation and have to do their job against the stream or against the will of some people, because the boss wants it, it helps enormously to stimulate those people as well. Actually, you have to be a little bit worried that they don't work too hard sometimes.
Well, with that, I would like to go to someone who also works quite hard, to Ion Petrovai. I got to know him quite well last year when I visited the region that he works from, that's Cluj-Napoca in Romania. He is always very vocal in our group, sharing his ideas, and he has now the opportunity to present what's happening in the Cluj-Napoca region. He is a promoter there of innovation from his own company, Fresh Blood. So that's an interesting point of view coming from one of the startups, actually, from a region that's trying to influence also the university community. So, Ion, please take your time to share.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me properly? It's okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Professor, for the previous introduction. I was quite interested by your experience in working with Erasmus MC of Rotterdam. I'm a medical doctor, and for us, Erasmus MC is one of the institutions that we look up to. And when you told us that it took 11 years to set up something, that makes me a little bit more optimistic about what we have achieved in the last 5 years. Hello, everybody. My name is George Petrovai. Thank you, Roel, for the introduction. It's my pleasure and privilege to tell you a Transylvanian story about universities and innovation. Just before starting, we are a startup, but we are not a for-profit startup. We are an NGO, and we have been established 5 years ago with the purpose of helping the IT guys that wanted to solve problems in healthcare and didn't have the clue how healthcare sees the problems. And slowly we grew up, we extended and we expanded our focus to helping innovation. And 3 years ago, we get in contact with EIT Health, and we begin to implement their projects and also focus on growing the ecosystem. So first things first, this is has been released last month. Unfortunately, we are the only representatives of the modest innovation around Europe. There are two major things for more major causes. Current administration and government of Romania is not considering research and innovation a priority, hence it underfunds it. The target has been always 2%, but current numbers are around 0.5% of GDP. And private institutions do not have a lot of experience developing innovative products in Romanian with Romanian know-how. So, however, we are there. We are there. We are called Transylvania. This is a region of Romania. It's quite famous, based on Bram Stoker and Hollywood. Every couple of years, somebody is doing in Hollywood something about Transylvania. We are in Cluj-Napoca, which has many names in Hungarian, German, and Latin. Napoca was the initial name, and we are not far from Bistrița, which is the city from Bram Stoker Dracula. We are a top IT industrial center. We have top Romania hospital, and we have a startup community. And this is where we actually started. What is our ecosystem? We have the Big Four. Big Four are the four major universities of Cluj-Napoca, Cluj-Napoca being the second largest city in Romania, the General University, the Medical University, the Technical University, and the Agronomical and Veterinary Universities. There are several more, but much smaller. And in this context, we entered the spot in the last 4 years. We have been established 5 years now, and 4 years ago, some things begin to happen. First of all, an opening towards innovation, then an opening towards entrepreneurship support at university level, and fresh blood health tech also happened in the last 4 years. So, as an example, we begin to see hackathons and innovathons being organized. Innovation Labs, which is the largest pre-acceleration program started in Bucharest, extended at national level. We have seen an establishing of technology transfer offices, and we have seen the OECD Higher Education Innovate 2019 report, which is pinpointing a lot of things to improve. However, in the last 5 years, people begin to believe that you can actually innovate from Romania. And also, didn't mention here, but everybody is looking up to UiPath, which is one of the top startups worldwide, which started in Romania, in Bucharest, but they have a headquarters in Cluj as well. And people see that Romania can actually lead in terms of innovation. What else happened? The government had some funding to support student entrepreneurial societies. And they built this as well as entrepreneurial programming for scientists. It was government competitive funding. Unfortunately, there is very little low internal support because there is not a lot of money. So there is a high variation of quality between the programs and universities. They are providing some support prizes and grants. I'm just putting out here 3 examples from Cluj-Napoca where we are all involved. But also what happened in the last 5 years was fresh blood health tech. We started helping innovators to grow their skills and projects. And we ended up helping organizations that aim to support innovators. Innovators from inside the organization and innovators from outside the organization. So this is an example of a training of innovation in October 2017. So very soon it will be 4 years since then, 3 years since then. And this was a high interest at the time. What we did, we got connected. And this is how we got to EIT Health. This is how we got to ECH Alliance. This is how we got to RoHealth, which is the cluster for health coming from Bucharest, the most active organization in Romania. And I would say that so far we have been able to help the evolution in the ecosystem because we have seen an evolution in terms of funding from the EIT Health. 2019, we had 2 local innovation projects. This year we have actually 4. The last one could not be implemented. And for InnoStars Awards, we had 1 in 2019, and this year we had also 4. So we have already things to put on the table. As I used to say all the time, we need to put carrots on the table to attract the rabbits and the people that eat the rabbit and the other animals that will eat the rabbits afterwards. So Coming back to our view of the ecosystem, I found this document, which is 2012. Not many things have changed since. About that, if you want the ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem to work, these 4 quadrants have to work together. And it's very difficult to make them work together because each and every one is working on their own agenda, have their own priorities, and in many situations, they are in conflict with each other. So the lucky part is that we are in the same quadrant. So we are academia, as I said, we are an NGO. We are very close to patient groups and charities. So this makes us a little bit more friendly. We are not going against the others, but this requires effort to collaborate with the others. And I had a question from Nora. What is the role of universities in the Cluj ecosystem? And I will use the words of our mayor. He's in campaign, but you are not voting for him, so this is probably okay. He's used to, by the way, university professor, Babes-Bolyai University, since 2004, the mayor of Cluj, and he was out of his job for 2 years, where he was the prime minister of Romania. So he's saying that Cluj has 4 things: talents, technology, trust, and tolerance. And we heard about the triple helix. He's speaking mostly about quintuple helix, where he puts also NGOs, citizens, public administration, private sector, and the universities. And I would say that we do have the talent in university, and we are going after the talent in universities, but with talent comes a lot of ego. And ego is the one that builds the walls. Talent might build the bridges, and ego is building the walls, because everybody wants to defend their own turf and or their own ivory tower. So the solution, the conclusion is, and the solution that we took, it's a quote that I found sometimes, and we say we built too many walls and not enough bridges. So we said, okay, maybe we cannot break so many walls, but we definitely can build some bridges. So we started, first of all, building the people. And we used the EIT Health support, and this is a picture on the right from the first Starship, EIT Health, where we had 1 Romanian lost somewhere in the middle of the picture. And on the left, you have in 2018, 7 Romanians, actually 8, but 1 Romanian was from Cambridge that attended the Starship. And for us, this was a way to bring good people up to a level and to a mindset that we can use afterwards to build things with them. The second thing is to build the mindset. And this is, once again, my opportunity to thank to Rolf for spending 2 days, very full days in Cluj-Napoca, and running around the university, meeting the people, and actually helping, passing on messages from one university to another, because people were not talking to each other because reasons. And this was extremely important for us at the time, and it opened a lot of perspectives, and we are still building on those perspectives. Another thing that we did on the right, we brought mindset in the university. On the right, you have an event where we actually organized a student startup competition in the medical university, which is the most conservative university probably in the city. And it was, I would say, a performance for the people there, for the audience, and it was probably the most interesting part of the conference. Next, we are moving to the building the bridges at 2 levels. First of all, we realized that we need to build the bridges at university staff level. So we built this year GPA, Inter-University Group for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, but under collaboration with Cluj City Hall, Northwest Development Agency, Transylvania IT Cluster, and we also mixing the students. We are mixing through, for example, 3 IT Health Innovation Day, 2018, 2019, and we are now preparing 2020 in the last week of October. And we made people believe that change is possible. And another question that I got is, what is the university attitude towards collaboration? I will say that it is improving. Like, for example, medical university is training the agronomic PhD in entrepreneurship, because the agronomy university has no student entrepreneurship society. Universities invite us, and this is a slide of mine. You will always recognize my slide. It's a lot of red to pinpoint to the fresh blood, to share the expertise. This is a webinar organized at Technical University. And Babes-Bolyai University invites professionals that have less academic credentials, but have extensive practical expertise. Here we have, for example, a course with public health students. What next? Well, there will be more money because Romania is slowly beginning to see opportunities in innovation. So the government now opened a call called Innotech Student. And you just need to keep this in mind, Innotech Student, and up to 100,000 euro for students. It's a 2 million euro program. You need to have 300 students minimum, 2% contribution, submission until August 31st. Currently, every university wants to apply by themselves. So all the big four have their own plans, and they say, we will take the students by ourselves. I'm trying to convince them to get into a consortium. It's hard. I'm still going to try. But if I succeed, it will be an achievement because it will increase significantly the value of the teams. But if I do not succeed, I will going to hunt the teams that are focused on healthcare in order to help them access the EIT health programs for the next years. So as a conclusion, we are building bridges. We build GPIA, we are using Innovation Days, and we are using EIT Health Support and the DRIVE program and the mentorship. And I like this quote from Transylvania to the Netherlands: you can invent alone, but you cannot innovate alone. And that's our challenge. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Jan. It's great to see progress also along the lines where I think we share the vision in this community that it should move towards to, and that you are getting some results, because these can be building blocks for working further on getting people on board with that. I would like to, oh, and happy birthday, right? I forgot that, but happy birthday.
Yeah. So I organized my own birthday, international birthday.
Yeah, very good. I would like to move to we have some time for reflection later, but I would like to move for an intermediate poll where everybody needs to chip in now. So Nora, if you can put up the questions, and maybe let's take just 4 minutes for filing the answers. Everybody knows what's the idea here, but we'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on these 3 questions. So one of them has multiple answers, and 2 questions have just 1 answer. So I think not too much is changing anymore. Oh yeah, still some people coming in.
Okay.
Some answers coming in.
Let's wait 10 seconds maybe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I can see them. Yeah. Karel, perhaps I could reflect a bit with you on some of these answers. Because I think it's quite interesting what's coming from it. And I'd be happy to hear some remarks from people that are listening. But so for the first question, most of them relate to culture. So what is the situation in the university like for researchers? And the first one is about to what extent is it clear to the research community whether collaboration has been appreciated? So luckily it says here that most of the people think it is clear, and it is even clear that it is appreciated. And only 3 people say it is clear that it is not appreciated. And to many also it isn't clear. So what could you say about that? What do you think is the situation in Delft by now, or what was it? Is it clear for people on whether this would be appreciated or not, collaboration with others?
Well, if it's not clear for the people in Delft, they must have been sleeping under a stone. But I can imagine that in many cases it's not clear because either the research leadership or management or other type of management doesn't talk about this much or is not making statements about this, or people have not, let's say, inquired what is the situation in my university or in my region. So there can be 2 reasons why it's unclear. But I assume that people in this audience have all at least inquired because they're interested in the topic. And then apparently the leadership in the region or in the university has not made it abundantly clear whether this is important or not. I think it's important that people keep on asking leadership what is expected from them. They can still deviate from what is expected from them, as I have said several times, but then at least they know that they are deviating. And
Yep.
if they don't know what leadership wants, then they cannot decide whether they're deviating or not.
So, I can recall from a situation in Leiden where I spoke with the people in the Faculty of Science there that they heard on the one hand that entrepreneurship was promoted, and then on the other hand there was a startup being housed in the company, in the faculty, making use of the labs, and actually they didn't get an open answer on how long they could stay there. So this was changed all the time. Every 2 months they didn't know if they were going to get an extension of the rent period or that they had to move. So and that was because of university leadership didn't make it clear to the dean whether it was supported that there was a startup in the company, so or in the faculty. So it was an unclear situation for them. They didn't really know how to do it.
Yeah, this is a general issue with leadership, of course. If they are not clear to the people they're leading, then it becomes more difficult. And if they get pushback from other people, then they start to, let's say, hesitate to say clearly yes or no. In situations where leaders are elected, they look at the electorate in order to decide what they're going to do sometimes, or very often. So yeah, these situations unfortunately exist, and you cannot resolve all of them, unfortunately. Keep on pushing and be convinced about your own route.
I would like to select one other topic here, and then we need to move on to Vladka for her presentation. And this is about IP. So you can do 2 things with IP, or maybe you can do more things with them, but we asked for, should you use IP to generate more income for the university, or and that's another option, should you use IP as leverage for setting up new collaboration with this industry? And they can be combined, but it was sort of 50-50 what the answers are. So what's your opinion on this? What's the value of IP? Do you become rich with that, or is it worthwhile to set up new collaborations? And what's the value of IP in this?
Yeah, I would agree with the answer in red here, which says collaborations are more important than making money. Of course, if you can make money, don't hesitate. But if you try to make that a goal, there's very low chance that you are going to be successful. If you look at the universities, and I've seen many of them, there's only a few that seriously make money on their IP, and usually because they have been lucky. So a university is not there to make money. A university is there to use money, to spend the money. That is the aim of the university, spending it on giving the best education possible, spending it on doing good research, spending it on collaborations with others, not creating money for creating money. This is a little bit black and white picture, of course, but I would agree with the answer given here. It gives you leverage. It helps if you have interesting IP and stories to tell. But IP for IP doesn't make any sense at all. Costs a lot of money. You may remember that in the Delft University of Technology, we spent millions of euros on our IP and gradually got into a situation where it sort of maintained itself by simply selling it, throwing it away, not maintaining it anymore, and being very selective. So now we are, as far as I know, in a situation where it's roughly balanced. The costs we have on our IP, maintaining it, getting new patents versus the income we get from it is roughly balanced. And if we are lucky someday, we might have a big one generating some money, good for our endowment fund.
Thank you. And with the remark that I'm happy to see that most of you responded that quite some bottom-up activities are already taking place in your region. I would like to move to Vladka. We already heard from Vladka in a question before, but she will give us a presentation now on what the situation is in Zagreb, coming from the TTO perspective. So Vladka, if you can open the mic and share your presentation.
Right, thank you. Let me start sharing. Let's see how it goes. Okay. Share.
We can see you.
Yes.
And we can share your, we can see your presentation as well.
And can you see the screen as well? Yes, I hope.
Yes,
so.
But your voice is breaking down a bit. Perhaps you should switch off the camera.
Okay, excellent, wonderful. All right, so yes, thank you, Karel, and thank you of the local ecosystem. Okay, maybe yes. And also maybe switch to mobile, but let's turn off the camera first. So yes, my experience is very much from, I would say, a TTO perspective. I've joined the technology transfer office 12 years ago, and actually I was the first employee then in the office. And when we started, we had furniture, but we unpacked the computers and everything else by ourselves. So it has been a journey, definitely, and working with the research community within the university, and also working with our local industry and increasingly international industry. So what I can say from this 12 years perspective is this definitely has been a culture change on both sides, and local industry that is willing to engage, but also willing to discuss issues such as intellectual property management, and the research community that is having increasingly questions about how to approach industry even better, or how to present themselves to industry, and how to get a win-win situation. Because when we started, it was really, most of the discussions was mainly about protecting our interests, which is still important, of course, but now we do see this shift towards getting a collaboration and to getting a solution that is agreeable to everybody. With that in mind, I do want to temper, you know, this a little bit and do show you this data that we have, and this is Croatia innovation performance. And we are a moderate innovator on a European scale, but it does pay to look at the data behind this. And this is really driven by non-R&D innovations. So with marketing, organizational innovations, and to some extent product and processes room for improvement, especially in these R&D expenditures that involve the private sector, that involve collaboration with the private and public sector. And of course, when we look with opportunity-driven entrepreneurship, so growth-driven entrepreneurship and investment readiness, there is huge room for improvement there. So looking at the Zagreb ecosystem and within Croatia, we do have certain benefits that come from, of course, from being a capital city, and of course being a huge population center. So a quarter of population of Croatia is actually associated with the wider Zagreb metropolitan area. We do have a growing startup scene, which is not focused on health, but more on various applications of ICT technologies, of pharma and biotech industry, new players, but also traditional players, which are, most of them are actually within 100 kilometers from Zagreb. Some of them are actually in Zagreb, so co-located there. I do want to give a special mention to Pliva, which might be known to people who are in the industry for some time. This is actually the place where the macrolide antibiotic azithromycin was invented in the 1980s. Really went to this distribution deal, global distribution deal with Pfizer. And this has made a huge change.
I think we lost her.
Yeah, I think we lost Fiametta. Sorry,
Vlatka. Yeah.
Vlatka.
But she's in the meeting. It shows.
Vlatka, we lost you.
Maybe no, because
she's.
Can you still hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
Yes, I do have a slight internet problem, which is at home. So let's see, where did we break?
I have the slides. Let me get them.
All right.
You were just talking about Pliva.
Actually, yes. So yeah, it really has made a huge impact on the community, because we have generations of professionals who have worked there, and we also have generations of people who have, enrolled in biochemical engineering programs in order to work there. So it really creates a community, and this effect are still seen nowadays. 30 years ago or no, even more than 30, 40 years ago after the azithromycin was invented. What is also a benefit for our local ecosystem is this concentration of public and private, increasingly private clinics and hospitals, which can then be partners for this community. Of course, traditional links are more with the public hospitals, but now growingly with the private hospitals.
Vlatka, can you see the slides?
And of course, yes.
Is this the right one?
That's the right one. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will tell you. Okay. Thank you very much. And what we also see, of course, in Zagreb is this concentration of talents in universities. This is predominantly down to the University of Zagreb, where I work, which is the largest in the country. It has 70,000 students. It is comprehensive and multidisciplinary, but is a comprehensive in a way that it does involve social sciences, humanities, natural sciences, but also a lot of technical faculties. So there is no separate technical university in Zagreb, and University of Zagreb has both the technical and the natural and social sciences. As such, it contributes to the about 50% of the national research outputs, and it's really active as well in I would say larger and competitive projects such as Horizon project. On top of that, we do see now more private universities coming in, which is relevant to health. Some of them have nursing programs, they have health management programs, and also through ICT and business education, which can also be very much relevant to health. So if you can switch the slide, please. So what would be this impact that then the researchers at the University of Zagreb have on the wider ecosystem? Of course, predominantly through the competitive R&D, and I've given examples of 2 Horizon projects. One is actually coordinated by the School of Medicine from the University of Zagreb. The other one is a partner, is the School of Faculty of Science. And what is really important in here, and you can see this by looking at the logos, that it doesn't just involve the faculty or the school that is in a consortium. It really involves local SMEs and local companies that are in the biotech space. Some of them are actually established by professors, and some of them have specific expertise such as product development or clinical trials, and they actually do come from this pharma industry tradition that we have there. So this is a really good connection, bringing the local community together, but then bringing them towards the more European, larger projects, and then building new bridges there. And if you can switch the slide as well, again. We do have some examples of linking, direct examples of linking research and commercialization. And this is a little bit of a numbers game. From my perspective, again, from a TTO, I would like to have a larger deal flow. I would really like to have a bigger pool of inventions that we can try to market, because not everyone succeeds. For us, of course, the success is also if this marketing effort or this connection with industry results in a research project. So it doesn't necessarily have to result in commercializing by it itself. However, we do absolutely celebrate the successes that we do have, and this is one of them. So we do have a group of Center for Research and Knowledge Transfer in the Biotechnology, which is one of the 3 groups in Croatia very much involved in virus research and vaccine research. They are part of this Center of Excellence that is actually led by the University of Rijeka, so a university from another town, and a hospital in Zagreb, infectious disease hospital. An example of this, I would say, internal collaboration, sharing, and also working together and creating new things. On top of that, this group did invent a process that they were very eager and proactive in working with us to get it protected through patent, to seek patent protection. And we were very also fortunate to be able to close a deal with a Slovenian manufacturing company. So it's a bioseparations that produces solutions for other pharma and biotech manufacturers. And we are really hoping that this will of course lead, yes, to revenues for the university, but also definitely for for other lines of research and new collaborations in this space. So next slide, please. Looking with our research community, I would definitely say there is this strong affinity to nurturing long-term industry relationships. The example I've given, there are many others. Of course, I could not mention all of them, but I really like this one because it does show this willingness from our faculty, and this case is the Faculty of Pharmacy and Biochemistry, to work with industry partner Pliva, but also to, over the long course of the years and different projects that are connected to each other, but also that this connection is sort of bridged and done through people. So people who have graduated as a PhD student, as a PhD graduate during one project, have actually come back and now are industry researchers willing to collaborate in another project, which then again include another local industry partner. So starting with this connection and working with PhD students has really led to another opportunity for both the faculty and for the industry partners. So next slide. One area where I think we should probably have more activity, but we have some inroads made, it's in the creation of the knowledge-based companies. And an excellent example is comprehensive water technology. So this was set up some 5-ish years ago by actually our Faculty of Chemical Engineering and Technology and University of Zagreb. So they as institutions are co-founders of this company. It really specializes in water management, wastewater management system, and it's very much, again, looking to the local pharma, but also other industry as a potential client in that. What we also have as a university have been involved is in the creation of the bio-incubation infrastructure. We are one of the co-founders, the minority co-founder in the local biocenter, which is the incubation center for biosciences. And this was led by the national government, of course, supported by the pre-accession and to some extent structural funding. It involved the city of Zagreb as well. And what is really important for this facility is it's not just space. It really involves laboratory services that are then open to other clients in the area, whether small biotech company or other players. And as such, it really does relieve a burden in terms of specialized services which might not be available to the startups that are starting in the biotech area. And finally, the next slide. And finally, I do want to touch upon this question of students and innovation, which is very important, of course, to the university. And this is something where we have been also very greatly supported with EIT Health. And also give some examples which are relevant to the health area. And this is Winter School of Research Commercialization, something that is again organized by the Faculty of Pharmacy and Biochemistry and with support from us. It involves topics such as industry-academia collaboration, panel discussion, new ventures, student creation, but also it's very interactive with panel discussions with industry, with workshops, with the pitching session, and really pushes the participants who are PhD students or older, some postdocs as well, but PhD students predominantly, for this next step. How to connect with industry and how to communicate with them, or how to communicate with investors. And we have been really fortunate that local industries absolutely recognize this. So we, in addition to support from EIT Health, from our Ministry of Science, we do have support from the local players, such as Xilia Pharmaceuticals, that has their R&D center in Zagreb, such as Pliva, which I have mentioned previously, such as Jadran Galensky, which is also very active in this space. And on top of that, there is the EIT Health Innovation Day, and this is has a little bit different approach, because it is set up as a one-day student competition, something that we have been again able to engage industry, but different industries. So no more looking at the pharma and biotech, but really looking to ICT types of solutions, and working with Ericsson, Nikola Tesla, especially that is also co-located in Zagreb, and as well very much with public user groups, and really trying to instill this user-oriented ideation or innovation creation in the student community. And with this, I do want to close my presentation. On my next slide, it's my contact information. So if there is any other questions, or you want to collaborate with the University of Zagreb related to any topics that I mentioned, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you so much, Vlatka, for this presentation. I would like to skip the breakout session. So there's still a number of questions, and I would like to make some remarks based on presentation from Jon and Vlatka. So first of all, I'm very happy to see that you both touch upon some very relevant topics already for that build the steering mechanisms for how to support innovation ecosystems. So you mentioned all the important domains. You have some examples, you have some numbers already. That's what we will work on in the next phase in module 2 in the program, to get this more quantified and share this in a similar manner that's more comparable. But you do have some examples of successes, and that's very important also to get more people on board. And also, you mentioned the alumni, which is a very important group. And I know that Jon is also having a very active alumni group on Facebook from Flesh Blood that he's working with to get them connected and keep them connected to the Cluj-Napoca region. So alumni are very important. I know in Delft we also have many collaborations with people coming from the university now working in industry or in other places. So that's really essential. But maybe Karel, there were a few questions that came in that I would like to talk with you about in the last 10 minutes. And the first one is, you talked about startups coming from TU Delft. And IP that is either put into that company or not. And sometimes it's just an existing company that takes over some IP. So one of the questions that came in was, so how do we do that as TU Delft when we have startups? Do we take equity? Do we take an active part in running the company? Do we take a minority share or majority share? And what stays the role of a university like TU Delft when there's a startup?
That's a lot of questions at once, Roel, but I'll try and go through them. There's a few rules we have. One is that we do not take a majority. Second is that we do not put money into the company. We've done that in the past here and there, but that was really an exception, and that is not the way we tend to go. We put IP in the company, and we put our knowledge available to the company in training, in supporting, and advising. Yes, some of our researchers can take shares in the company if they started themselves or their students started. So this is allowed if there is no conflict of interest on both sides. So if they cannot make decisions on the university side related to that company. So summing up, minority, mainly IP in exchange for shares. And an exit strategy. The strategy of the university or Yes Delft is exit. So if the companies can stand on their own legs and can do their own thing, then they should do that. As long as we can help them with training and support and advice, we are there willing to help them.
Okay, and then I think it's an important one to. So you mentioned the curiosity-driven research. And this can take a long time before that has an effect. So if you're a board member, selected board member, chosen board member that's there for 4 years, what are arguments for you to choose to focus more on curiosity-driven research, or for that, in that case, of other long-term ambitions? How do you measure short-term effects that you can showcase as a board member of a university? So how do you measure short-term successes related to a long-term ambition?
Yeah, it's like with the stock exchange. You cannot measure the long-term trends by looking at the short-term developments. So the short-term can go everywhere, and you cannot predict. So the long-term you have to create by having a shared vision and by gradually creating a culture. Let me tell you how I did that, but of course everybody has to find his or her own way. I did that by discussing with the faculty, and by faculty I mean the assistant, associate, and full professor, so the core of the research generating organization, not the research performing, these are the PhDs and the postdocs, but the core of the research generating proposals, ideas, and direction. And this debate in the Faculty of Applied Sciences, I started at a larger scale with that, because in your own department this is relatively easy, by organizing 4 or 5 times a year a meeting with the faculty members, assistant, associate, full professors, alphabetically, inviting them to come to this meeting. They determine the agenda. We have a U-shaped setup with 25 around the table, and I walk around, and there's one topic I bring in to discuss, and there's the other topics come by them. I continue doing that as a rector every 2 or 3 weeks, inviting all the faculty members, which I basically, there's 1,100 of them, which most of them I knew by name and face, at random through the university. So they mostly influenced each other. And this is a way to talk to them, to get a feeling for what they want, what they need, to what is, and what a university is. And it also helps enormously for one faculty member to correct the other ones from the other faculty or from the other domain. The agenda was simple. There was a rolling agenda. I simply took the agenda from the previous meeting. They determined the agenda. If they wanted to change the agenda at that moment, I immediately changed the agenda by majority voting. And again, there was one topic I put in, usually an HR topic. For the last 1.5 years, I have put open science on the table, discussed open access, discussed fair data and everything that comes with it. So this is what you can do as a leader for the unit you're responsible for to, well, influence the culture. Even in 4 years' time, you can do quite a bit. And I think the larger the organization you're managing, the slower it goes. Huh? So therefore, I am in favor of serving as a rector for 2 terms of 8 years. We have terms of 4 years, not determined by the law, by the way. It's simply tradition, and it's determined by the board of trustees how long this period will be. Can be longer, can be forever, but normally it's 4 years. But I think you should be willing to serve for 8 years in order to really have an impact in a positive way, and you also can be kicked out halfway if that's the wrong impact. But again, perseverance, continuing, being enthusiastic, talking to people, communication. In my view, more than 95% of the problems we have in organizations, in between people in the world, is a lack of proper communication. If we would communicate always at the right moment, in the right time, in the right intensity, in the right way, we would have much problems solved. Technologically, usually it's not a problem. It's a matter of communication. So emphasis on communicating with your people is extremely important in my view.
And that's coming from the rector of the University of Technology. So that says something. And I think these are actually great closing words as well. We're almost at 12. I see still a question from George, but I will answer him that question personally because I know the answer. So with that, I would like to end this session of today, but not without thanking, of course, Ian and Vladka for giving their presentation, Nora for organizing everything again, and especially you, Karel. It was a pleasure hearing from your experience and for the time you spent on this. So we highly appreciate it. Perhaps we will come back someday with you. We hope to do this for a few years. And we will be sure to keep you up to date of progress that's being made in this program. So with that, I would like to close up for today.
Thank you, Roel. It was a pleasure doing. And of course, if you're nearby and ever come to Delft with the group, I'll be happy to share further insights and to discuss in, let's say, in live form, face-to-face, which is much more fun than this. But okay, we'll have to live with it.
Yes, we're looking forward to that. We would be very happy to organize that. And thank you for your offer. I'm looking forward to it personally as well, to go to Delft again. But I'm sure we will get there. And for now, I would like to say, everybody, have a very nice day. And the recordings and the presentations will be shared shortly on the learning management system. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.